The atmosphere at the Steffi Graf Stadium in Berlin often carries a specific kind of weight, a reverence for the history of the game that mirrors the legendary name etched onto the venue's entrance. But on a pivotal afternoon in June 2026, the air felt different. It was thicker, charged with the kinetic energy of an upset that felt less like a fluke and more like a coronation. On court one, Eala stood motionless, a figure of raw, unfiltered emotion. Her racket, the tool of her trade, hung loosely in her left hand, almost forgotten, as her right hand instinctively moved to cover her mouth. Tears blurred her vision, not of pain, but of the overwhelming realization of what she had just accomplished. Across the net stood Aryna Sabalenka. For Eala, Svitolina was more than just a world-class opponent. She was a childhood pillar of the sport. Growing up in Manila, a young Eala had spent countless hours positioned in front of a television screen, studying Svitolina's relentless baseline coverage and her tactical brilliance. Svitolina, a former world number 3 with 20 career singles titles to her name, had been a distant idol. Now, in the surreal light of a Berlin afternoon, that idol was walking toward the net to offer a handshake of congratulations. The screen was gone. The distance had vanished. Eala had not just competed with her hero, she had defeated her in straight sets. The scoreboard displayed a crisp 6-3, 6-4. The stadium clock noted a match duration of 1 hour and 23 minutes. Yet, those clinical figures failed to capture the seismic shift occurring within the hierarchy of the WTA Tour. Behind the immediate result lay a burgeoning statistic that demanded attention. This was Eala's 6th career victory over a top 10 opponent, and remarkably, her second such win in less than 48 hours. During her on-court interview, still visibly shaken by the magnitude of the moment, the 21-year-old unseeded wildcard admitted she was in a state of shock. But for those watching closely, the shock was beginning to give way to a new reality. Eala was no longer a prospect. She was a problem. Among the elite circle of players observing this rise was the world number 1, Aryna Sabalenka. Sabalenka's interest in Eala was not a sudden byproduct of the Berlin results. It was a long-held conviction. Looking toward the future, Sabalenka spoke with an unusual level of candor about the possibility of facing the young Filipina again, even expressing a desire to meet her in another final. This wasn't the typical polite encouragement often handed down by veterans to rising stars. This was the respect of a peer. The foundation of this respect was perhaps best documented in an extensive interview with ABS-CBN titled Born for Center Court. In that sit-down, Sabalenka spoke of Eala with a genuine sense of anticipation. She described a player who didn't just belong on the big stage, but was seemingly engineered for it. For Sabalenka, the reigning queen of the rankings, Eala was already viewed as a serious threat, a player whose ceiling was yet to be found. That interview, conducted weeks prior, served as the perfect prologue for the events in Berlin. Between June 18th and June 20th, 2026, the tennis world witnessed the moment Sabalenka's private prediction transitioned into a public, undeniable reality. Before arriving in Berlin, Eala was ranked outside the world's top 30. She was unseeded, flying under the radar of the general public, and held only a single career victory over a top 10 player on grass. By the time she departed the German capital, the landscape of her career had been fundamentally altered. She left with a career-high ranking, a guaranteed seed for Wimbledon, and the scalp of 2 top 10 titans taken on consecutive nights. The rankings were updated, but the more significant update was the change in perception. For the better part of the previous season, the narrative surrounding Eala had been one of cautious optimism. She was the gifted junior making the arduous climb to the senior circuit. Many pointed to her 2025 breakthrough in Miami, where she defeated 4 top 30 opponents, including a monumental win over Iga Świątek in the semifinals, as evidence of her talent. However, skeptics remained. That Miami run was often viewed through a narrow lens, a perfect storm of fast hard courts, humid conditions, and a local Filipino diaspora that turned the stands into a home court advantage. The question lingered. Could she do it elsewhere? Could she do it on the slick, unforgiving grass of Europe without the same environmental variables? Berlin provided the definitive answer. There were no familiar conditions to lean on here. There was only the grass, the pressure, and the elite opposition. The conversation shifted instantly from potential to proof. Before this tournament, Eala was the player who had caught fire once. She also carried a statistical burden that seemed to follow her: a 1-13 record against Czech players and a lack of proven results on grass. Elite players respected her, but they weren't necessarily losing sleep over her in their section of the draw. That era of anonymity ended in the span of 2 nights. The transformation began in the round of 16. Eala was matched against the tournament's second seed, Aryna Sabalenka. To understand the gravity of this match, one must understand Sabalenka's pedigree. As the 2022 Wimbledon champion, Sabalenka is arguably the cleanest ball striker in the women's game. Her serve on grass is not just a weapon, it is an existential threat to an opponent's rhythm. Yet, Eala found a way to neutralize that power. She didn't just survive, she thrived, taking the match 7-5, 6-4. In the vacuum of a single tournament, a win over Sabalenka could be dismissed as a momentary lapse by the favorite or a singular peak from the underdog. But Eala refused to let the narrative settle there. Less than 24 hours later, she stepped back onto the court to face Svitolina, the number 6 seed. By defeating the tournament's second seed one night and the 6th seed the next, Eala turned a moment into a pattern. The world began to ask a more intriguing question. Was Miami the ceiling, or was it simply the foundation? While the scores of 6-3, 6-4 against Svitolina look comfortable on paper, they represent a masterclass in tactical discipline. Svitolina entered that quarterfinal with a formidable 35-9 record for the season, holding the prestige of a former world number 3 and a WTA Finals champion. This wasn't a win handed over due to injury or a depleted draw. Eala had to outthink and outwork one of the most consistent players in the history of the tour. The technical breakdown of the match reveals the evolution of Eala's game. On grass, power is usually the deciding factor, and Svitolina held the advantage on the serve, striking 4 aces to Eala's 1. However, the match wasn't won on the serve, it was won on the return and within the grueling rallies that followed. According to analysis from ESPN and the Tennis Channel, the disparity in execution was stark. Svitolina, forced out of her comfort zone, committed 23 unforced errors. In contrast, Eala was clinical, tallying a mere 9. Eala's efficiency on the return was particularly devastating. She won 13 of 22 points on Svitolina's first serve and half of the points on the Ukrainian's second serve. These are elite numbers against a player known for her defensive prowess. Eala also maintained a 69% first serve rate, a crucial threshold that prevented Svitolina from attacking her and taking control of the points. In essence, Eala didn't overpower Svitolina, she outmaneuvered her. She extended rallies, forcing Svitolina to hit the extra ball time and again until the veteran's consistency wavered. For years, the story on Eala had focused on her left-handed explosive ground strokes, the raw pace she could generate. Berlin added a second layer to that narrative. It revealed a player with tactical intelligence, a deep sense of court awareness, and a level of composure that belied her 21 years. This maturity caught the eye of Tracy Austin, a 2-time U.S. Open champion and Hall of Famer. Austin, known for her objective and often demanding analysis on the Tennis Channel, was effusive in her praise. She highlighted Eala's mental sturdiness, particularly in the final game of the match. Trailing 0-30 while serving for the victory, Eala didn't panic. She utilized serve variation, adjusted her spins, and kept Svitolina off balance until the match was hers. Austin's use of the word sturdy is significant. It describes a mental foundation that doesn't crack under the pressure of the finish line. It suggests a player who has already mastered the hardest part of professional tennis, the internal battle. The fallout from Berlin was immediate and quantifiable. Eala's ranking surged from approximately number 49 at the start of the season to a career high of world number 30. This wasn't just a move up a list, it was a passport to a different level of the sport. By climbing into the top 30, Eala secured the number 29 seed for Wimbledon 2026. The significance of being a seeded player at a Grand Slam cannot be overstated. It is the invisible shield of the draw. It meant that for the first time in her career, Eala would not have to face a top-ranked player in the opening rounds. She had moved from being the giant killer to being the giant that others wanted to avoid. She was now on the side of the draw that unseeded players looked at with apprehension. Wimbledon 2026 thus became a historic venue for Philippine sports. On July 2nd, Eala stepped onto the grass for her second-round match against Maya Joint. With the eyes of a nation watching, she secured a victory that propelled her into the third round of a Grand Slam for the first time in her life. In doing so, she became the first Filipino woman ever to reach the third round of a Grand Slam singles tournament, a milestone officially recognized by Wimbledon's historians. To put this in perspective, only 2 years prior, the Philippines had never even seen a player seeded at a major. Now, they had a representative not only seeded, but advancing into the second week of the most prestigious tournament in the world. Eala was no longer just playing for herself. She was the vanguard of a new tennis nation. This rise coincides with the WTA's strategic focus on the Asia-Pacific region. As the tour invests heavily in these markets, Eala has emerged as the perfect ambassador. She represents a bridge between the established traditions of the sport and a burgeoning fan base in Southeast Asia. For millions in the Philippines, she is a source of immense national pride, a symbol that the highest peaks of international tennis are reachable. Looking at the broader trajectory of her career, Eala is beginning to tick every box required for elite status. Success in professional tennis is defined by the ability to win on multiple surfaces. One-hit wonders are common. Versatile champions are rare. Eala has now proven she can take down top 10 talent on the grid of Miami's hard courts and the elegance of Berlin's grass. While a major breakthrough on clay remains the final frontier for her resume, the breadth of her current success is impossible to overlook. Coaches, scouts, and tournament directors are no longer looking at Eala as a dangerous wild card. They are analyzing her as a mainstay of the top 30. They are noting her discipline, her 9 unforced error matches, and her ability to neutralize the biggest serves in the game. They are seeing a player who doesn't just rely on her left-handed power, but uses it as a setup for a sophisticated tactical game. As Wimbledon 2026 progressed, Eala found herself in the same rooms and on the same practice courts as Sabalenka, Rybakina, and Pegula, not as a fan or an interloper, but as a peer. She has officially entered the most exclusive circle in the sport, the seeded elite. The journey from a young girl watching Aryna Sabalenka on a television in Manila to defeating her on the grass of Berlin is a narrative of relentless progression. It is a story of a player who met every doubt with a result and every challenge with a new layer of skill. As the 2026 season continues, the tennis world is no longer wondering if Eala belongs on the center court. They are simply waiting to see how long she will own it. The transition from potential to proof is complete. Eala hasn't just arrived, she has established residency at the top of the game.